My name is Libby Murray, and I want to thank you for joining us tonight for another one of Lifetime's adoption webinars. We are featuring Summer's adoption story tonight, and we get to hear about how she and her husband Paul met their youngest son just last month, just in January. So they have been in new parent bliss for 4 weeks here, adding a third child to their home, and we get to hear about that. But first I want to just welcome you and kind of go over a few details before we begin. Some of you may be very new to webinars, and so I just want to say I'm glad you're here. And if you have any questions tonight, all of you are encouraged to just type them into that questions or chat box on your screen, and we'll see your comments too if you have anything you want to share or chime in about. And if you're joining us by phone, you can still participate by emailing me at libby@lifetimeadoption.com. If you are new to considering adoption or new to considering Lifetime's program, we would love to hear from you and answer any questions that you have one-on-one after tonight's call later this week or next week, whenever is convenient for you. And you can always contact Lifetime. Now, one of the most direct ways is online at lifetimeadoption.com, or you can call us 1-800-923-6784. You can always email, and if you don't have a coordinator to email with already, you can shoot it over to adopt@lifetimeadoption.com, and we can always make sure that we direct it to the to the person who can answer those questions best. And then, of course, we would love for you to join in our conversation on Facebook. We've had a lot of really great topics lately, kind of taking some polls and getting experience from other birth parents and other adoptive parents. You can check out a lot of those posts if you go to facebook.com/open.adoption. And the reason I say join the conversation there is because it really does turn into a dialogue, and we not only get to learn more about you, but you get to learn more about our heart for adoption, but also the benefit of other people's experiences. And so it's been really, really cool to see resources and tips come out in specific areas just from other people who are touched by adoption. And then, of course, just like we're having tonight, that you're building your adoption story right now, and part of what's going to get you there is the comments, are the questions that you will ask and that you will share. And it all leads you step by step towards the baby that you're hoping for. So I'm glad to see so many of you here, and really want to encourage your participation in future webinars too. Another good resource I want to mention is adoptionteleconference.com. So if you have missed any of our recent webinars or you want to catch up and listen to any again, you can check out those recordings at adoptionteleconference.com, and we'll try and type in some of those links for you in a little bit here. So I would like to take a moment and just welcome our guest host tonight. Summer just adopted her little boy. She was waiting in Lifetime's program, and I actually got to know her through her wait. But we also did a webinar together last year that was only open to Lifetime's waiting families because we got to talk about adoption profiles. And Paul and Summer graciously shared their profile and some of the updates that they were making to help other families to see what we're talking about when we're guiding you through that process, because that is part of Lifetime's adoption services, to help you, represent yourself and put yourself out there to the mothers who are thinking about adoption, and your profile is just one of those ways. So tonight, though, we get to hear about how that profile led to their newest little boy. And so, Summer, I'm so glad you're here. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
You and I were talking before our call began, and I think it's just good for us to start at the beginning. And one of the questions I wrote down was just, how did you know you wanted to adopt? Because I think a lot of people even get stuck there. Is just, well, what does that mean? Like, of course I agree with it, or I think it's okay, but how did you know when it became something personal to you?
Right. Well, way back in the beginning, Paul and I first talked about adoption on our first date when I was a freshman in college, and Paul's a little bit older than me. He was back in school after being in the Army, and this was back in the 90s. And I had a heart for adoption because I had done some missions work down in Central America, like in Guatemala, and I saw orphanages full of little children, and it's like I want to do something about that. So come all these years later, we ended up not going with international adoption. We figured that domestic adoption was best for us. But how we got there, though, was after having 2 children and kind of life happening, and every once in a while, kind of talking about, oh yeah, remember we were going to maybe adopt someday or something, kind of thing. After our 2 were born, Samuel and David, who are now 12 and 6. And Paul went through medical school and then 3 years of residency and 3 years of fellowship. This was a long, long time of stuff. We were like, oh, let's have a 3rd baby. Well, it just didn't work out. We experienced, I guess, what they call secondary infertility. And so, we were just kind of like, oh, well, golly, I don't know. It was kind of, a different thing all of a sudden, and we prayed about it a lot, and realized that, infertility treatments, personally just weren't for us, and we were like, I think this is why God put that in our hearts so many years ago, that we wanted to adopt. And so, we started looking into adoption, seriously. We talked to a bunch of different agencies and adoption attorneys or adoption facilitators, or and just we're not real happy with a lot of responses that we were getting, and that led us to Lifetime, and we just really clicked. So so that's kind of, I guess, in a nutshell.
And the webinar's done. No, just
kidding.
But, you mentioned having your boys before you began pursuing adoption. So had you tried to add a child to your family and gone through any experience with infertility before deciding now was the time to adopt?
Yes, exactly. We right, exactly. We experienced secondary infertility, and so after Samuel and David were born, and then we were like, oh, let's have a 3rd child, and then it just wasn't working out, and so then we realized that's why God put that in our hearts, for adoption, and that's when we started looking toward adoption seriously, researching it, figuring out exactly what it was. And, there's so many different agencies or facilitators or attorneys that you can go with, and, if you talk to different people, they have their different opinions about who to go with, and, and you just got to basically go out and interview them, on the phone, mostly. And we definitely clicked with Lifetime, hands down, basically.
And so I know you said you had considered all the types of adoption. Now, for instance, one of the questions that just came in, I was actually going to ask, because I do know that it's on the minds, especially of parents who maybe they share in common with you the fact that they already have 1 or 2 children, and whether that's biologically or through adoption. Sometimes I know, from having worked in adoption for so long, there are the people that want to say, well, you already have 2 children. Why do you need to adopt, or why do you need a 3rd? Or,
Right.
How did you and your husband know that we're still called to build our family?
I think it was just in our hearts, and we're like, well, if God put this in our hearts, and this desire is in our hearts for for another child, more children, whatever it ends up being, but we have this roadblock of infertility, then obviously it's just a redirect. That's kind of just what we took it as. And for me, I'm definitely, kind of a type A personality. I'm definitely kind of like a control kind of person. And so I think that was what was a little bit devastating to me in the first, part of this, that I was like, well, my goodness, I can't make God, put another person on this, or, give me another pregnancy. I can't make that happen. There's nothing I can do. And so, if it's not going to happen, it's just not going to happen that way. And so, we realized, well, that's why this thing of adoption has kind of always been in the background, for us, as far as a little bit of a conversation that we've had, over the last several years.
Mm-hmm. So then, of course, another question that came in here too, I know, is also, was it hard for you to tell your boys, or how did you explain adoption? How did you talk to them about, well, we want to add a child to our family, and mom and dad are going to adopt? What was that conversation like with them?
I think it was just kind of very matter of fact. It was just like, hey guys, this is what we're doing. We're going to adopt. This is what adoption is. It's not going to happen, right away. This is going to be a little bit of a process. Now, of course, the process of it, we didn't want to have to, involve them too much in it, other than the home study, just kind of knowing what was going on. But I mean, there's a wait involved, and we didn't want them to feel stressed out about it, or like, oh, why isn't something happening, or they're kids, they've got their own little lives going on and stuff, so we didn't want it to affect them too much. But yeah, I just kind of explained to them, this is what adoption is, and I mean, they were just like, okay. Samuel, our oldest, he's 12. He has a few friends who are adopted, I think mostly from other countries, and he has a few friends who have younger siblings who are adopted. So he definitely knew, understood the whole thing, and he's a little bit older. David was 4 when we started this. He's 6 now, so he's kind of grown into it, I guess you could say.
So, which is a good question too, because with you and Paul, feeling led to adopt, had your family already had experience with adoption, or had you known any neighbors or friends who had adopted?
Not really anyone in our family, no. Friends, yes. I mean, just kind of over the years, sure, we've known some people, family, friends who have adopted. Not very many. It's not, I guess, not too many, but yeah, I mean, a handful. So, but no one in our family.
Like what I love hearing in that is just, every story is so different, but I mean, just everything you're saying just really does add up to, we just wanted to. We decided we were gonna, and
yeah.
Now I know, well, we always get this question, so I'm just going to ask it, because usually one of the most common questions we hear at Lifetime is, is there an age limit to adopt? And since you guys were experienced parents already, and did you have any of those concerns? Because I know part of Marty's story, for instance, Lifetime's founder, was that I don't even think she was into her mid-30s, but she was told, oh, you're too old to adopt, and that was a big part of where her passion stemmed from, was this is not too old to adopt.
Yeah, no, exactly. And yeah, I mean, we definitely ran into that when we were first researching adoption and saying, okay, do we do international, do we do domestic? There was a lot of reasons why we were not going to do international adoption. Not anything against the children, they're great and they need homes, and it's awesome. But just us personally, with Paul's job, he couldn't, go and go to China for 3 weeks or whatever it was exactly, things like that. And then also it was the age thing, so that they, international adoption didn't really like Paul's age, because he was already in his mid-40s at the time, and And there were some domestic agencies who told me, no, I'm sorry, you're an older couple. I'm like, really? After going through infertility issues and being kind of told that from doctors already, it's like, I really don't need to be told that again. Thank you. But so, I mean, there was definitely points where I kind of had to, pick myself back up and say, you know what, this isn't over. I'm gonna keep trying until we click somewhere and it works out.
I'm so glad you brought that point up about Paul and his work, because I do think that for those of you on the call who maybe you haven't quite yet decided what kind of adoption you want to pursue, what path you want to begin, because there are different types of adoption, and I think it's necessary because not everyone's called to adopt the same way, and there's certainly a need for families to respond to all the types. But that, we don't talk about this a lot, but one of the reasons to consider the type you end up choosing is whether or not you're able to meet the travel requirements. And I know that international adoption, if you have a career that won't allow for you to make several extended trips, in a short period of time, that's definitely worth considering, because you don't want to put your family's livelihood at risk either.
Right.
And that played in. I mean, I think that's such a good point. We don't get to talk about that very often. But if you're in that boat and you're thinking, yeah, I'm not really sure how much time I could actually take off from work on top of then, my maternity leave or something like that, that you're allowed your family medical leave, for instance. But that all weighed in to how you got on this path.
That was a big factor for us. Yeah.
So, one of the things I always am curious too is just because we're in a generation now. I look forward to seeing all the lifetime families and babies that are growing up now. 10, 20 years from now, how they've changed the face of adoption, because open adoption is becoming more and more common and talked about. Now, is that something that you and Paul had ever even thought about, even long ago when adoption was laid on your hearts? Or was that something you kind of had to wrap your mind around once you decided to adopt? Was the concept of open adoption?
I think so. I mean, really, because adoption was it was something that was in our hearts, but it was still a very abstract concept to us, when we, started this, seriously. There was a lot to learn. I mean, even, educating our families on, well, what do you mean they're going to pick you, you're not going to pick them, kind of thing, as far as, a birth parent picking us, like we had to wait around. And it's like, no, that's not how it works. This is where we put out a profile, through Lifetime, and then, and they have the option of picking whomever they want. And you know what, hopefully, it's us at some point. But, and that leads toward, and hopefully, an open adoption. And that was something, that Paul and I don't think it was never a struggle, the concept of open adoption, once we realized, like, what adoption is today and what is going on. I mean, we're very happy to have an open line of communication, hopefully some visits. With this adoption, with Joey, his birth parents, I don't know what they're going to want exactly, because they're wanting to be kind of closed at this point, which in my heart is a little bit disappointing. But I've told them, you know what, we're here when and if you're ever ready to change that. This is kind of getting ahead, but we basically have texted and things, the last few weeks.
Now, we did have a question come in, and I want to get to this too, because I love hearing you talk about we knew there'd be a wait, and that there were benefits to a woman choosing us, and that we'd have to just wait for her. But I know having worked with you, it didn't always feel that easy as it just sounded coming out of your mouth just now.
Right.
Like, it wasn't just, oh, no big deal, we'll be chosen. It's for the best. That I mean, you guys waited. You guys waited to be chosen, and that's a serious haul. Is holding out, just knowing and trusting and believing. How did you get through those moments? And then one of the questions we had too was also, while you were waiting, how did you address your boys' questions about when will we adopt? When's it going to happen?
You know, they really didn't bring that up. I think that, you know, they're just, you know, they're real busy with their stuff. I mean, adoption was, you know, kind of always like, hey, at some point we're going to adopt, you know, kind of thing. But, you know, we just were definitely always very casual with them about it. I didn't want any kind of stress from, you know, building up in them over it. And, you know, over the last, you know, that last year, you know, 2013, I mean, we you know, spoke with 3 different birth moms. So, you know, one in January that then ended up not ever matching and, you know, not ever pursuing adoption. And then the one match we had over the summer for a couple of months, and then with Joey's birth parents at the end of the year. So, you know, there was, you know, along the way, there were things happening, and I think at the very least, you know, Sam and Davis felt like there was a perception of things happening, even if it was just us updating our profile, or, oh, there's a webinar we need to get on, you know, that kind of stuff. So, I mean, you know, just kind of keeping it like, okay, you know, we're just still in this process. But yeah, I mean, kind of going back to the other question of the wait. Yeah, it was hard. I mean, it wasn't always easy at the very least, and there was, you know, there was times where it was like, well, even if we're going to match 10 years from now, even if I could just know that for sure, then that would be fine, you know.
Yes.
It was.
I always say that. I always say if I could tell every family exactly how long it would take for them to adopt, I would be the most popular staff at Lifetime. Because it's true. I mean, if somebody said, you will adopt 4 years from next March, you know, that you would think, okay, well, that's a lot longer than I thought it would be, but at least I know it's coming.
Exactly, it's coming.
Exactly. Have that same mentality.
Yeah, so what, you know, I personally, obviously it was a lot of prayer, a lot of you know, praying for other Lifetime families and seeing their, you know, their adoptions come through, and just feeling like, well, you know what, it's not us, but at least it's someone, you know, and it's happening. And, you know, and if you had been praying for that, you know, that was the family you were targeting, and you were praying for them every single day, until you saw, you know, their little thing change from, you know, nothing to waiting to adopted, then, you know, then that's a win in your heart too. So, you know, that was definitely a good thing to do, and, you know, to keep doing.
Well, and I think while we're talking about the wait now, I have this photo up now, obviously, because you got to be at little Joey's birth, right? So this is probably almost immediately after his birth, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I was supposed to be in the room when he was born, but then he ended up being a C-section, and so his birth mom, and they're married, his birth parents are married, happily married. They have another child who's very, very young, and so they just couldn't do it. You know, they just couldn't take on, you know, another baby, another child, and so yes, I was there. I was supposed to be in the delivery room, but then when it came down to a C-section, you know, because of, you know, just things weren't progressing the way they needed to, then Paul and I were in the waiting room when he was actually born.
And so we have a lot of people saying, why was the wait so long, or how long did you actually wait? Now you had, okay, so the reason I kind of want to backtrack here, get my train of thought, because you touched on the wait, and I do think that there are fears that people have when they're approaching adoption, when they're thinking about adopting, and I think a lot of that usually stems from all the people that you lovingly tell, we've decided to adopt, and then they say, oh, I've heard it takes forever to adopt, and so then you start to think, how am I going to get through that? How will I survive that? And then the other fear is, yeah, but, you know, what if she changes her mind? And so that actually before you got to meet little Joey here, that you had actually been matched before and had a mother change her mind. So you went through that. what would you tell other parents who get a little frozen thinking of, I just don't know how I could go on, I don't know how I could handle that? What did you learn through that, or what perspective did you keep through the failed adoption to keep you pushing forward to meet the child you were meant to adopt?
I just, it was tough. I will just put out there, it was tough when that birth mother changed her mind. We did, everything that we were supposed to do. We were matched for a couple of months. We kept in contact. I was totally, there for her. I was her sounding board. She was going through a crazy situation with her husband. They were getting divorced. It was horrible. And so I was there for her. Paul and I flew out to San Francisco because she wanted us to kind of put her other children's minds at ease. We did that. We had an amazing, an amazing weekend with her and her children and her best friend, who was there to meet us too and check us out, and everything. And yeah, it was tough, but I wasn't going to be mad about it. It's like what I told her. I said, I'm a parent too. I knew that was going to be a tough decision. I knew it was going to be the toughest decision ever. And if you're deciding not to go through with it, I can't fault you for that. And she was a new Christian, and I knew that if I brought anger into it, then that wasn't going to bode well for for her faith moving forward, because she knew I was a Christian. That was a level that we connected on, definitely. So I just kind of had to chalk it up to, we need to be there for her then, and that's what it was.
Now, and part of the reason, because your story has a little bit of a twist, because part of the reason that you were waiting a little longer was because initially you were very specific in wanting to search for a girl. But then you decided, well, we would be open to considering a woman who didn't know what she was having.
Right, exactly, yeah.
And then God brought you a boy.
Right, exactly, yeah.
Which, sometimes it happens that way, and other times we see it where families open up and then they still end up with the baby that they were initially telling us they were searching for. So you just never know. But for the families on the call who wonder, well, I would really like to say that I would only like to adopt a boy, or I only want to adopt a girl. Do you have advice for them? Because I always feel like that's a very personal decision.
Yeah. I think that honestly, that decision was born out of all of the kind of, I don't know how to explain it, maybe just like internal turmoil of the issue of dealing with, infertility. Oh my goodness, this is like our one shot for another child. Just all of, just a little bit of, like, oh my goodness, why can't we just have, 10 more of our own kids kind of thing, and adopt along the way, but more leisurely or whatever. And so just thinking like, this is our one shot kind of thing. And one of the things that was, on my mind was, well, we are getting older. Well, I'm in my 30s. Paul's, now in his late 40s. Will we ever have another shot again? But, our ages never even came up. My age with our match over the summer came up because, that birth mom and I were the same age. And so that was just kind of something we connected on. Yeah. But other than that,
another interesting point, just to pause there too, is that I made a note. I didn't realize that both of the mothers who you had matched with were married. Which, if you're new, if any of you are new to the concept of adoption and a birth mother and this whole, you get to know her and what she's going through. If anyone out there has any perceptions or stereotypes about who adoption is right for, I hope that this shows you, here Summer was matched with two married mothers.
And further than that, the birth mom that we were talking with last January, who ended up not doing adoption, that we were just talking with her, so we never even matched because she just ended up deciding not to do it. She was married as well.
Right.
So that,
I couldn't,
all
yeah,
three of them.
that's amazing.
Three of them.
Oh, yeah. So, I mean, did that surprise you when you were chosen by these women who, shared a faith with you or shared an age with you or shared marital status in common with you? Did that surprise you that you had things in common like that with these women who were seeking adoption?
Yeah, definitely. At first, yeah, definitely. That I guess because you have that, 16 and pregnant kind of, thought process. When you think about, adoption and who's out there, needing to, place their child. But no, I mean, really, it's just kind of, anyone who's just in a situation where that's what they need to do.
So focusing on Joey's birth parents now. What I think is great that I'm seeing more and more of these days is that open adoption is actually including the birth father too.
Yeah.
And so I've seen that be another reason when there's an adoptive couple involved that both of the couple are just engaged with this match, that it's not just left to the women, because now there's this father, this birth father who's come into the picture, and he also has a say. But with Joey's parents now, we're not going to talk about them by name tonight because they had a very confidential adoption plan, but you were able to get to know them. How long were you actually matched with them before Joey was born?
About a month. I think that was exactly a month from when we first spoke with him. And actually, it was Joey's birth father who called. Like, we had the phone call set up. They were going to call between like 6 and 7 or something like that, on whatever day it was in mid-December. And I got the call, and I knew it was an area code from where they lived, so I knew it was them, and, I answered it. And, yeah, it was his birth father, which super sweet guy, I guess I wasn't necessarily expecting that, even though with our prior match I did speak with the father on that one as well. But, yeah, he called. And he and I spoke for probably, I don't know, maybe 2 minutes. I mean, they're a younger couple, early 20s, have another, very young child. And, it was a brief conversation actually with both of them. He gave the phone over to Joey's birth mother. After we spoke for just a couple minutes, she and I spoke for maybe 6 or 7 minutes. It wasn't very long at all. And honestly, other than our in-person conversations, that's the only time I've ever spoken with them on the phone. We text a lot.
Wow. So do you remember why? Now, they chose you from a profile, right? Did they talk to you about, why you stood out, or?
She said, and I don't think they ever saw our physical profile. The book, they chose us from online, our online profile. She said that when she saw our picture, it was our, I think, just, colonized, just the two of us picture. She said when she saw our picture, she just knew. I don't know. I don't know what it was about our picture, but.
I hear that a lot. Now, did you, having gone through the failed matches before, do you in hindsight see any difference between them, like as far as your gut feeling or that feeling of we just knew?
Yes. With the match over the summer, even though we were preparing, I have a ton of girl-oriented things up in my attic at this point that I just kind of put away right now because that fell through. I kind of knew. I was like, I mean, is she not going to figure this out? And, I just knew in my heart that that wasn't going to work. Even though we were going through it and I was totally invested emotionally, yeah. This, though, I don't know. I just knew. We just clicked, you know, and even though I had clicked with the other birth mother before as well, and even the one that we had, you know, just kind of, you know, been talking with for, you know, a week or so, back in, you know, last January, you know, the January 2013. But this time, I think the only hard thing about the, you know, the time for match, the time when, you know, Joey was born, was that we didn't really know when the due date was. And so it was just kind of like, you know, is it right now, or do I have to like drop everything and leave, you know, which is fine, or, you know, and what it ended up coming down to was a scheduled induction. So, but that was interesting because, you know, because we have 2 children, and so I kind of had to keep like their little bags packed. I was like, all right, these are your go bags. Like this is it when this happens. We're going to take you guys, we're going to go next door, you know, and they're going to take care of you and get you to school and everything. And of course, it was December, and then it was January, and the weather was changing, and you know, they have school uniforms and and so I'm like having to constantly like reevaluate what I have in their bags. So it's a little bit.
Which, you know, that's a really good tip, because most people talk about a diaper bag and maybe, you know, having a quick list for things they need to take to travel, but also if you have children or pets, you need to have some stuff ready to go for where they're going to be staying too.
Right, exactly.
So that's a really good reminder. All the things you can plan ahead for. You know, part of what I love too, and I know now you ended up updating your nursery when you became matched with Joey's birth parents. Did you know?
Yeah.
Did you know he was going to be a boy before he was born?
About halfway through the match, we found out. Yes. And and it was interesting that Paul was like, you know what? Actually, it was kind of therapeutic to just, you know, to paint over the pink and paint the room beige, and you know, put up all his cute little, you know, woodland animal things all over the room. You know, it was good. It was good to just have a big, you know, change, you know, for this little guy, you know, starting new. And so
that's what I'm going to bring up, just a picture, because I love this picture you sent me of you sitting in the nursery, because I know that you had a nursery just waiting and ready. And I love seeing this shot, because I know how long you were just, you know, curious about what this moment would become. I mean, what was it like to bring him home into his space?
Well, now, of course, he still has a, you know, a bassinet and a cradle in, you know, in our room, but, you know, but just bringing him home was just, you know, it felt really good. And, of course, we didn't have to do the airplane travel because, you know, he was born just, you know, a few hours from where we live. And it was good. It was good to get him home, you know, and just kind of, you know, be a family and introduce him to Sam and David, and you know, who, you know, we're just so excited to meet him, you know, and of course, you know, all our friends and neighbors and everything, and we're having a little, you know, baby shower kind of thing. I don't know if you really call it that, after the baby's here this weekend. So, you know, a lot of people. Yeah, it's definitely good.
Now, for those of you on the call, I was teasing Summer a little bit, because now that she's on child number 3. There's no family of 5 photos yet, so we could tell the object of her camera's affection has been this cute little chubby-cheeked baby boy. Here he is with one of his brothers here.
Well, and really, because you know, my undergraduate degree is in photojournalism. Like we don't really do a lot of pose pictures, so you know, I just kind of capture moments, you know, as they happen. So. You know, usually it's not all 5 of us together.
Now, I wanted to, because one of the things that just inspired me, just with your heart since bringing Joey home, was part of the reason I wanted to have you on tonight's webinar, because I knew we'd have a mixed audience here. And you just talked about, you know, that to think just a short time ago that you and Paul were thinking, adoption is for us. We're so excited to adopt, and that you know, now having him, that you know how much this boy was meant to be yours. You know, what what's changed in your mind as far as what maybe you thought it would be like to welcome a child through adoption and what it's actually been like? Like, is there a difference?
Yeah. You know, because before we laid eyes on him, we had no idea. We had no idea what that meant when we were saying, oh yeah, sure, we're going to adopt. It's going to be great. We're just going to add him to our family, and it's going to be wonderful. And I'll tell you the story of when we first saw him. Because his birth mother did need to go and have a C-section, Paul and I did have to go and go to the waiting room. And so we're waiting, and then his birth father finally, comes out and was like, "Oh, he's here, y'all come." And so we followed him, with the closed unit, of course, and we followed him through those doors. And there's, I don't know, anyone who's been in a labor and delivery floor. There's those doors you have to get through that are locked, and then basically on the other side of those doors is the nurse's station. So I figured when we went through those two doors, we were going to see the nurse's station, and we were going to go somewhere, and then we were going to see the baby. No, we opened those doors, and he was right there in a little bassinet, and he had his little head turned toward us and his eyes wide open, looking straight at us. And it was at that moment, it was like, oh my gosh. I just lost it. He just looked right at us, right when we opened those doors. And of course, his birth father was right there next to me, and I turned to him and I gave him the biggest hug, and I was just like, oh my goodness, thank you. We're going to take such good care of him. And so he was crying, his birth father was crying. Of course, I was crying. Paul was crying. The nurse who was trying to tell me, who had control of the bassinet, who was trying to tell me something, I don't even know what she was saying, was crying when I looked at her, and I remember Paul saying, "She doesn't hear what you're saying." To the nurse. Don't even. And I remember just, of course, then behind us, behind on the other side of the bassinet was the nurse's station. I could vaguely see, like, all these people back there, all these nurses, everyone's kind of gathered, and I don't know if they were crying, but I know all of us on the other side of the nurse's station were all, and it was, it took everything I had not to just, pick him up and just hold him, but, I knew that wasn't, time to do that yet. So what the nurse, I guess, was saying was, I don't know, that she was going to take him to go and be with his birth mother in recovery for a little while, and then she was going to bring him to us. And so then that's what happened.
So then you kind of had to let him go for a little bit, and then you got to see him again. In that middle time, did you go visit with his birth parents in recovery at all, or?
No, what happened was Joey went to recovery to where his birth mother was. He was born at about 4:08. It was probably about 6:30 that night that he was brought to us. And the hospital was very accommodating. They gave us a room in their special baby unit, special care unit, or something like that. It's like basically a step down from the NICU. They don't have a NICU at that hospital. He did not need any kind of special care or anything, but it was just where they had a space for us. So there was a room, and it was, a pretty decent-sized room, and, we could, have this little bassinet, and there was a couch that pulled out into a bed to sleep on. So we went, I guess we just went there and waited for him to come to us, and it wasn't very long. It wasn't very long at all. So so we did, and then so he spent that evening with us, and then when later that afternoon on 6, that was Friday evening when he was born, and then Saturday, we had him with us, of course, all day Saturday, and then the papers were signed with the attorney. Saturday late afternoon. And so when we were signing our papers with the attorney, after the birth parents had signed their papers, they came to where we were, all of them, the attorney and the birth parents came to where we were in the hospital. When we went to sign our, when she came for us to sign our papers, we went with her like in the waiting room area to sign the papers, and then the birth parents went into the unit where we were with the baby, had been with the baby, and so they could spend a little bit more time with them while we did our paperwork. And then what happened then was, it was definitely very, very emotional, because at no point did Joey's parents not want him. I mean, they love him so much. It was just, they just decided they couldn't do it. And I'm glad that we can, be there, for them, and, and we get to have Joey in our family and love him, forever. But, it's an emotional thing, definitely.
Well, and I love you saying that, because I think that there's so many different reasons that a birth parent would choose adoption, but it, in my experience, is never about not wanting.
Right.
That's sort of an outdated expectation, I think. Do you keep in touch with them now? I mean, since he's been born and home with you, do you text with them at all, or let them know how much he's gained weight, or?
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. I have. We've texted. It seems to be what they kind of prefer. When that picture you just put up. Actually, I was like, I need to send you guys this picture. It's so cute. It's from the, I had a photography session done of him when he was just about a week old, and his birth father is actually a really amazing baseball player, and
cool.
And so that's why I had, actually that's Sam's mitt. I brought it with me to make sure that the photographer would have all the stuff, the baseball stuff, because I wanted that kind of a photo for them. And but of course I asked him. I texted his birth father when I sent her that picture. I was like, there's a picture I really wanted to send you. Is that okay? Because I wanted to make sure. I didn't want her to. She's in college right now. I didn't want her to pick up her phone and see a picture of the baby, unexpectedly. And so, I asked her if I could send her that one, and she said yes, and I did, and she loved it, and his birth father loved it too. And we've texted about, just things about them. We've texted, about, each of, Joey's little doctor's appointments he's had, since he was born, just the regular, well, baby, texts and things. And they've enjoyed hearing about it, so it's good.
So do you already find yourself talking to little Joey about his story and his tummy parents and where he started and how he came to you?
I find myself just telling them every day, we love you so much. God, and we have, one of our friends gave us one of the books, God Brought Us You, or God Gave Us You, or something like that. And and I read him that one, and I just want to get in the routine of just telling him every day how much he is loved and he wanted, and just to make sure that he always knows that that he ended up in our family because that's where God got him to.
We have kind of a little technical question here, just because it's not uncommon these days, but it is very special when a hospital is very accommodating to the adoptive parents. And so we had a couple questions come in saying, so did you have to pay for that extra room, or did the hospital just give it to you, or how did that work out?
I don't really understand the whole insurance thing. We have received a bill from the hospital. There's a little bit of an issue, which actually I'm not going to get into too much, but when his birth mother was on Medicaid. And so our private insurance, or whatever insurance we have through the hospital that Paul works at, they won't pick him up until the day that we sign the papers, which was the next day. So there is a little bit of a lag there. The whole entire bill, even with, and I don't know if you want to get into this, but he did have to have an echo done just because, and it was totally fine. Joey's heart is absolutely amazing. It's perfect. But there was just like a little bit of a question with this new test that they're doing on newborn babies when they leave the hospital. I mean, so even with that, which that was almost half of the bill is less than $2,000. And so insurance is going to, I guess, pay for everything, everything other than, I don't know, that first night that he was born, it really doesn't make any sense. So they're going to itemize out the bill, and then the hospital said they would give us a 70% discount if we're paying cash for whatever part we're paying cash for. So, I mean, we're talking about probably $100, $200 maybe, at the most. But I don't really understand what that bill was for. I guess it was for his room, our room, but it didn't really amount to much of anything, so I don't know.
Right, and I've heard that before. I mean, certainly I would say we try and prepare families for as much as we can, but sometimes there are things just in the moment. It might be good for those of you still waiting right now to write down questions that you can grab out of your pocket when things are on the fly and you're in motion, because if that's a concern of yours, like if you're at the hospital and they offer you a room and you don't have the presence of mind because you're so excited to meet this baby to say, who's covering that and how will it get paid for? Write it down and keep remembering, I need to look at these questions. But other things,
yeah,
I'm
sorry, not to interrupt, but just because the baby's going to have a room anyway, and so if they're, the baby's going to have a space, and so that's why they gave us that special care unit, because then it was like the room was just kind of came along with the fact that the baby was there, and because the baby's going to have somewhere anyway. So,
right.
If they're offering a room, yeah, I would take it. It was weird, though, because, that was, again, another closed unit that, and we would have to call every time we came back in because you couldn't have any food or drink. You only have water in there, and that was it. So I don't really understand why exactly, but you can only have water. So to get food, we had to leave. And so every time we would come back, we'd have to call on the phone in the lobby, and and they would say, okay, well, who are you? Well, I don't know. When we were there, I don't know that the hospital ever actually knew our names. It was really strange because I was like, I don't think these people even know who we are, honestly. But I had the bracelet because his birth mother was given 2 bracelets. She kept one, and I had one. So I had a bracelet with her name on it, which was, kind of different. But, that's how things just needed to be, I guess. And then the hospital actually contacted Dina at Lifetime in Florida and said, hey, if you have those adoptive parents, please contact us. We need their insurance information.
Right. And that's,
so
sometimes they're able to catch you, other times they call us, and we try and help them coordinate those details. And for any of you who might be thinking, oh my gosh, this seems like so much to keep track of in the heat of the moment, I mean, that is why
we'll figure it out.
Right, exactly. I mean, it doesn't all have to come down to a split second. And also, that's why Lifetime, for matched families, especially in those moments when your baby's born, we are available 24 hours. And so sometimes we get those calls of, the hospital's asking us for billing information, but I thought that her insurance was going to cover this and that we can talk to them. Yeah. But every hospital is different, and that's why it's helpful to have so many stories, but also to know that your story may flow a little differently, but that one of the things that is important to us is that families don't totally feel like they're just out there having to figure it out. If it gets confusing, they can step back. One of them or both of them can call us and say, is this normal, or how do other people handle this? And that we'll do the best to communicate and keep things going. And what I love hearing about this is just that the hospital knew that there was a pending adoption plan, but they were very accommodating.
Yes.
So other hospitals might have told that mother, no, you can't give them one of the bracelets, that's for you and the father only or something. I mean, so you, again, just have to sort of be flexible and open to what, what's going to get us to meet this baby, and sometimes that means just keeping your mouth shut and going with what they'll let you do, but knowing that you have somebody else you can reach out to and say, can you help us communicate this, or can you help us figure that out? And what I think is strong about you and Paul is that you were always, whether it was profiles while you were waiting to adopt, or completing your home study, keeping it updated, keeping in touch, staying engaged with webinars, continuing to inform yourselves and seek out the support that you needed. I mean, you are a good example of, you want to adopt, you're just going to do what it takes to get there. Now when it comes to open adoption, I know we're kind of rounding out our hour here, but we had a couple people who are a little newer to the concept of open adoption to share. I'm not sure if my husband and I are mentally prepared to become involved with birth mothers or their families. What do you tell other people who don't really understand what you have through Joey's open adoption?
Yeah, I think that, from the other birth mother that we were also matched with and the other one that we had spoken with, they understand that it's not co-parenting. And really, I think that they just want to, well, of course, with Joey's parents was a little bit different, because in the very beginning they were like, we don't want anything. They just wanted to, just move on and forget about it. And that, of course, really, I don't know. I thought that was kind of sad, but, they're kind of coming around now. But, I don't think that they're trying to co-parent at all. I think that they're just wanting to make sure that they made a good decision, that their baby's okay. And having already been a parent at this point, I can appreciate that. Of course you want, you can't, and it's interesting because actually there was a text I got from back in the summer when we were matched before, and it was just kind of a little bit of frantic text from that birth mother. She was like, I really need to talk about something, call me as soon as you can. And I was actually in an appointment, and I got out, and then I called her, and she was like, I just need to know that when we, and this didn't end up working out, but she's like, I just need to know that when we leave the hospital, she's like, that's going to be my lowest point. I just need to know, I need to be able to have in my mind at that point that we have some kind of a plan to meet up again. And I was like, yeah, we'll do it. I was like, let's make a plan. What, do you want to come for Thanksgiving, or us come out there, or, because she had kids too, and so, there were schedules and things like that, school schedules and things, and I'm like, just tell me, and we'll be there. I don't think it's, we're not going to fly with a teeny baby, because that's not good for them, but, we'll bring you out to us, because she was in California. But yeah, I think it's more of a having that reassurance, knowing ahead of time that they are placing their child, but that they're not having a complete loss, that they are going to be able to have some insight so that they can have peace of mind and peace in their heart. And I think that's what open adoption is, when I think about it.
When you look at Joey, do you see any of them in him?
It's interesting. That first night when we had him, I was like, oh my gosh, you look so much like your birth father. Not in, not in any kind of negative way, of course, just in a, like, just wow.
That person way. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just wow. But no, I mean, I've never looked at him and thought of him as anything other than than ours. You know, I mean, just from the very beginning, he was our little guy. You know, and it's interesting because I've had people over the last few weeks say, "Oh my gosh, how old is your baby?" "Oh, he's a couple weeks old, or he's a few weeks old." Like, oh my goodness, you look really good for just having a baby. And I hate to. I don't want to say, oh, well, he's adopted. I don't want to label him in any way. I mean, he's our baby. So I just kind of try to sidestep the issue for the most part. But
do you ever, because I think that I know a lot of parents hear that, especially when they adopt a baby of a similar race, and certainly in that newborn stage, I think that's a really common experience. Is, oh wow, like you recovered fast.
Yeah.
Do you ever share, with the people that are interested in listening, or the ones that you can trust, to hear a little bit of it? Do you ever end up saying, well, actually, we just adopted
Oh,
him?
yes. Yeah, definitely. And, this is just kind of a point that I would like to make real quick, that, when you are waiting or when you are matched, people who are, already lifetime family, will know this, that there's 3 different responses that you get, and they're pretty even, about a third, and a third, that, when you say, we're waiting to adopt, or we're matched to adopt, we're so excited, there is a third of people who will be so excited for you, and they're just, cheering you on. They're so excited. They're going to, bring you baby gifts, before the baby's even there, and whatever. They're so excited. And then there's about a third of people who are just real negative, and are like, I don't know why you would do that. Like, well, you don't know what you're going to get. You don't know what you're going to get when you have a baby biologically either. So, I don't really understand the negativity that comes from, probably maybe about a third of people. And then you have probably another third of people who will very quietly come up to you, maybe email you, maybe ask you to lunch, and you don't really know why until you get there, who just want to know about adoption. And they feel like maybe it's in their hearts, but they're just not really sure, and they don't know what it's all about. And they want to hear about your experience and what you did and how you found out about it and how you researched it and how you came to where you are. And they're real happy for you, but they're definitely watching you, and they're watching your reactions as you go through your journey of adoption, and they're hoping, they're hoping that one day that they're going to come to that point too.
That's a really good observation, and I don't think that we touch on that a lot, but it is so true. I mean, when you decide to pursue adoption, whether you are a birth parent or an adoptive parent, you will come up on, I would say those are the 3 most common reactions, are people that are totally supportive and excited, and there's the people who do voice negativity about it, and then there are the others who maybe have some stereotypes or confusion about the way things used to be, and they just want to know, what's that about, and what's that like, and that every adoption story I see is such an opportunity. It just calls you beyond your immediate family and your immediate dream, and it's like you kind of end up with this huge picture, that now, even his parents, if they ever decide someday, his birth parents ever decide to tell their family about him or share their story, that there's these people out there who you're connected to through your son, and it doesn't change anything about how much of a family you are, but that I always see, I haven't even adopted, but just being able to work with people touched by adoption, people will share stories with me, and I get the same reactions. Some people are very amazed and excited, others are skeptical, and then there's the people that want to pull me aside and just pick my brain about it and learn about it. And I think that's awesome. You're the type of mom I can see and know that you're very protective of your kids, so
Yeah.
throughout his life, you're probably going to be choosy about who knows what about his story.
Yeah.
But then also, you're also very honest and open about your calling, the calling on your family's lives to build it, to build and extend you through adoption, and it's just awesome to see. And I'm just so excited. I love hearing about you getting to meet him and you just having that peace of mind that he's your baby.
Mm-hmm.
Now that you've had him just here a month, is he even a month old yet?
No, tomorrow he'll be a month. No, tomorrow will be 4
goodness.
weeks. So no, he's not even a month yet. Yeah, no, tomorrow will be 4 weeks. He was born on the 17th of January.
There were some questions just wondering, how long between, when you started with Lifetime and you had your home study done and you were officially waiting and searching for a match, how long has it been waiting now to get here, almost a month home with your baby?
In total, it was 2.5 years. But that being said, in 2013, in the time that we were, whatever, quote, on the market, being, out there, that we weren't matched with someone, was probably 9 or 10 months, and we spoke with 3 different birth mothers. So, it just kind of, we updated our profile book. We made it, a little more simple. I think that we did a lot of things better, and it's just, well, you know what, Jody wasn't born until January 17th of 2014, so that's what it took. It's kind of what it came down to.
Well, I'm so glad for your story tonight, and I know, some stories move quicker, although, I always think back, there's one story I love that we did a few years ago, and I remember we had to clarify because when the question was asked, how long did you wait to adopt your daughter, they said 15 years, and we had to clarify that was not, within Lifetime, within our program, but that they actually adopted really quickly within ours, but that it was a 15-year journey to get there. And then here, you had this other experience. You could say, well, we've waited 20 years to meet him because adoption was laid on your heart so long ago. Before we end tonight, is there anything that you would want to stress or emphasize to people that are trying to decide if they should answer that call to adopt, or how to get past those fears or those questions and to just start doing it, or even for the people that are maybe starting to have doubts, like, am I on the right path? Is there anything that you know in your heart now, seeing what you've come through and having that moment of certainty, this is the baby I've been waiting for? What would you say?
Yeah, for people who aren't sure, just think about it, pray about it, whatever's right for you. And if you feel called to adopt, if you feel like that's in your heart, then go for it. Just go for it, and it will fall into place. For those of who are waiting, yeah, we had we waited, and it wasn't always easy. And you have to just stay in faith that there is, that there is a baby or child out there for you, and if you really truly feel that it's something that you're supposed to do, then you know what, it'll happen. And there was times when I definitely didn't, I had to remind myself of that, I guess I should say, because I think I always believed it, but I was, sometimes I had to remind myself. And I had friends who, and I think, Libby, I had actually emailed you this is last spring. I had a friend who was like, well, when are you just going to give up hope? When are you just going to stop? And I told her I'm not going to, because I think this is, Paul and I truly feel like this is the path that God put us on. For whatever, is at the end of it, we're not there yet. so you just gotta see it through and just stick with it. And for as much as we waited and all of that, and you know what, we might even do it again. So there you go. All that. It's good. It's good. It's good to have have the baby home and look at him and feel and having 2 other biological children and looking at him and not feeling anything different. It's just exactly the way it's just kind of all moves along. This is exactly the way it was supposed to be. He's our little baby. He's going to be our Joey forever, or Joseph Sawyer forever.
That's awesome. I'm so glad you touched on that too, because I know that's a question I think a lot of parents are really hesitant and shy about asking, but that I would say probably at least 9 out of 10 adoptive parents have to address that question of, how is it different to love a child that I bring into my family through adoption versus giving birth? And every time I always hear there's no difference, but I know that it is something that goes through their minds, especially when they haven't adopted yet. And I just love hearing that from your heart, and I'm so excited you to just have this whole year of firsts with baby Joey. And I'm thankful you could share your story tonight. We've had a lot of feedback coming in on how helpful it's been, how encouraging you've been, and how much it just validates, where they're at in their path as they move to their child. So thank you so much, Summer, for being here tonight.
Oh, thanks for having me.
For those of you on the call, some of you may have even had some help behind the scenes with some of your questions with one of Lifetime's coordinators, Kim King. So if you have any questions and you're not yet part of Lifetime's program, I know that Kim and our other coordinators would be glad to answer those questions. So you can always write to adopt@lifetimeadoption.com or keep in touch with your Lifetime coordinator, whether that's Kim or Jen or Patty, Michelle, any of those coordinators that you may already know and be working with. Just let us know what's on your mind, what information would be helpful. And I want to thank all of you in the audience for your questions and participation tonight too, and for the comments that you shared, and those of you that typed in that you were crying along with Summer when she talked about meeting her baby the first time. It's just wonderful to see all of you engaged and listening tonight, and we will meet with you again soon. We'll have an adoption Q&A later this month, and I hope all of you enjoy your weekend and that you will keep in touch and let us know how we can help you along this path. Have a great night, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. Bye-bye.